It had that kind of energy, one of those days when nothing aligned quite right. I'd spent the whole morning scrambling to pull together last-minute touches for my sister's birthday bash, an event I was supposed to attend with my son, Zachary. At 19, he'd grown into this self-assured, quietly charismatic young man, and I couldn't help but feel a wave of pride every time I looked at him. At 39, I found myself caught between that pride and a strange nervousness about how fast everything seemed to be evolving. We were already behind schedule when we stepped into the elevator of our downtown Chicago apartment building. It was one of those slightly dated elevators, metallic walls, low humming lights, and a hint of recycled air. Zach tapped the button for the lobby as I mentally replayed the checklist I hadn't yet completed. He was hunched over his phone, probably texting someone about the party. Then, with zero warning, the elevator came to a halt. "What the?" he muttered, raising an eyebrow as he tapped the panel again. "Nothing." The screen above blinked for a second and then blacked out entirely. I moved toward the emergency button, pressing it with calm urgency, but silence was my only reply. "It's not responding," I said, a note of tension creeping into my voice. Zach moved beside me, giving the panel another try before exhaling sharply. Of course. Perfect timing. We shared a look that said everything. The space around us suddenly seemed to contract, the usual elevator hum replaced with a silence that bordered on eerie. "Well," I offered, trying to sound upbeat, "we'll just have to wait. Someone's bound to notice." He leaned back, arms folded. "Yeah, it's not like we were rushing to be somewhere, or anything." I let out a short laugh, though it came out thinner than intended. "At least it's not a stranger I'm stuck with." He cracked a smile, because every guy dreams of being trapped in an elevator with his mom. I rolled my eyes and slid down to sit on the floor. Might as well get comfortable. No point standing. He hesitated but eventually settled across from me, stretching his legs with a grunt. The space was tight, but not unbearable. The initial discomfort began to settle as time slipped by. I glanced at him, noticing the small but distinct changes, his stronger build, the way his face had matured. He looked so grown up. "You've really changed," I murmured, unable to stop myself. His eyes met mine, curious. "Yeah? How so?" "You just carry yourself differently. More grown up. More you." He tilted his head slightly, a subtle grin forming. "You've changed too." "Oh, really?" I said, arching an eyebrow. "Do tell." He shrugged, playful. "You're less controlling than you used to be." I gasped in mock offense. "Excuse me? I'll have you know I am incredibly chill." He laughed, his voice echoing lightly off the walls. "Sure. If that helps you sleep at night." We both cracked up, the tension melting into something lighter. For the first time in months, I realized how much I missed having this, just the two of us, talking like old times. Zach checked his phone a few times, but the signal bar remained stubbornly empty. I tried the call button again, still no sound. The air had gotten warmer, heavy even, and I could feel sweat beading at my temples. He noticed and handed me a half-full water bottle from his backpack. "Appreciate it," I said, taking a small sip. He nodded, his gaze steady. "You okay?" "Yeah," I replied, exhaling. "Just a little uneasy. These spaces get to me." He moved slightly closer, his voice softer now. "We'll be out soon. It's gonna be okay." His calm gave me pause. He wasn't the fidgety teenager I once had to coax through everything. He was composed, grounded.
Grown.
The time passed unnoticed as we talked about school, vacations we'd almost forgotten, little stories that had collected dust over the years. Oddly enough, it felt like something we hadn't had in a long time, uninterrupted time to just be. The elevator had grown noticeably colder now. I hadn't realized it until I felt a chill creep up my spine. The heating must have gone down with the power. I shivered and wrapped my arms around myself. Zach noticed. Without saying a word, he shifted toward me and draped his arm gently around my shoulders. It was a natural movement, calm and instinctive. I tensed for a split second, then relaxed into the warmth of his body. My head found its way to his shoulder. "You're cold," Zach murmured, his voice laced with quiet concern. "I'm all right," I replied automatically, though the involuntary chatter of my teeth betrayed me. Without hesitation, he tugged me a bit closer, his arm tightening around my shoulder. "You're shivering. Don't pretend you're not freezing." I let out a shaky chuckle. "You'd think a metal box would trap heat better." He laughed under his breath. "Yeah, lucky us, right?" A soft scent drifted from him, sandalwood, with a hint of something sharper, citrus maybe. I hadn't noticed it earlier, but here, in the stillness, it seemed to fill the air between us. Familiar, reassuring. I closed my eyes, letting my head rest a little more comfortably against his chest, his slow, even breathing oddly soothing. Whatever anxiety I'd felt earlier was fading, replaced by something quieter and warmer. A flicker of calm. But not just that. There was something else stirring beneath it. Something I didn't want to name. "You always wear that cologne?" I asked, my voice barely above a murmur. He tilted his head toward me.
"Yeah."
"You like it?" "It's nice," I said honestly. "Comforting." He didn't answer right away. Then, with a sideways glance and a small grin, he said, "Pretty sure we're the only ones in this building who'd call this elevator comforting." I laughed. "I meant you, not the elevator." He smiled again, that easy, boyish grin that used to belong to a kid and now felt like it belonged to someone grown. "Well, I'm glad." Then, after a pause, he added, "You know, all those people at Aunt Robin's party tonight? They're missing out." I glanced up. "Missing out on what?" His voice dropped a little.
"You."
"You're the most beautiful woman who was supposed to be there." The compliment hit unexpectedly. Not because it was over the top, it wasn't. It was simple. But the way he said it, the softness in his tone, made something shift inside me. "Zach," I said lightly, attempting to dismiss the sudden tightness in my chest, "don't be ridiculous." "I'm not," he said quietly, his tone firm but gentle. "You look amazing. Always have." I turned away slightly, unsure how to respond. I'd been complimented before, years ago, when things were simpler, when I still saw that version of myself. But hearing it now from him felt different, more real, and more complicated. "You always do this," he said softly. "Deflect." I looked at him again. "What do you mean?" "Whenever someone says something kind about you, you push it away. Like you can't believe it's true." I swallowed hard. He wasn't wrong. "I guess I'm just not used to hearing it," I admitted, my voice almost too quiet. "Well, you should be," he replied, his arms still around me. "Because it is true. You're beautiful. Inside and out." His words landed like a quiet wave, unexpected, soft, and impossible to ignore. I gave him a small, grateful smile. "Thank you." "You don't need to thank me," he said, eyes steady. "Just try believing it." For a while, we sat like that, the cold air no longer as biting, the silence around us feeling less like isolation and more like a cocoon. I leaned in closer, breathing in the quiet warmth of the moment. Something about being here, alone with him, felt strangely timeless, like the world had pressed pause, and it was just us. I could hear his heart beating, a steady rhythm beneath the stillness, and feel the faint movement of his hand resting near mine. My fingers fidgeted with the hem of my coat, trying to distract myself from the sudden weight of everything I was feeling. "Think anyone's noticed we're missing yet?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Probably," he replied with a smirk. "But honestly, I'm not in a rush." "No." He shook his head.
"Nah."
"It's kind of nice. No phones buzzing, no one asking questions, just this." There was something in the way he said it that made my chest tighten again. I nodded slowly.
"Yeah."
"It is." We both grew quiet again. The kind of quiet that didn't need to be filled. The elevator walls, once stark and cold, seemed to blur around the edges. My focus had narrowed to the warmth of his arm, the sound of his voice in my ear, the steady closeness of someone I hadn't really connected with like this in a long time. He shifted slightly, eyes drifting toward the blank control panel. One hand rested on his knee, his fingers tapping gently, something I'd seen him do since he was little. Always a sign he was thinking too hard. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, breaking the soft silence that had wrapped itself around us. Zach looked over at me, his brow slightly furrowed, his eyes thoughtful. "Just stuff. Life, mostly." I gave him a sideways glance. "That's awfully broad." A faint chuckle escaped him. "All right, fair. More specifically, I've been thinking about the kind of person I want to end up with someday. Like someone I could really build a life with." That caught me off guard.
Oh,
He nodded, glancing down at his hands. "I've come to realize something kind of important." I waited, sensing there was more he hadn't said yet. "I want someone like you," he said quietly, as though the weight of those words had been resting on his chest for a while. I blinked, unsure of how to respond. His words landed softly, but carried more meaning than I was prepared for. "Zach," I said gently, my voice faltering, "that's a really lovely thing to hear." He turned to me fully now, his expression open and sincere. "I mean it. You're strong, you're kind, you make people feel safe. You're everything I'd want in someone." I felt the air shift between us, subtle, but unmistakable. The weight of his words settled over me, and for a moment, I couldn't tell if the warmth in my chest was from his compliment or from something deeper stirring beneath it. "Zach," I said again, slower this time, "that's really touching. But I'm your mom." He didn't flinch, and that's part of it. "You've shown me what love looks like, what being patient and real and supportive looks like. It's not just about being related. It's about who you are." I was quiet. There was nothing romantic or inappropriate in his tone, only a quiet admiration that made my chest tighten. It felt more like being seen than anything I'd experienced in a long time. "I don't know what to say," I finally admitted. "You don't have to say anything," he replied, his voice even softer now. I've been holding it in for so long. I needed you to know." He looked down again, his thumb rubbing along the seam of his jeans. And then, as if powered by something unspoken, he leaned forward. Time slowed. His lips brushed lightly against mine, a touch so gentle it was almost tentative. Not demanding, not pressing, just a moment shared in stillness. I froze. My pulse thundered in my ears as the edges of everything blurred. The feeling was disorienting, unfamiliar, and impossibly tender. "Zach." My voice was a breath more than a sound. "I know," he said quickly, pulling back, searching my eyes. "I'm sorry. Everything felt so clear in here, with you, and I couldn't keep pretending." I could see the vulnerability in his face. He wasn't trying to test boundaries. He was bearing something raw and honest, and in that moment I didn't feel offended. I felt stunned, overwhelmed. I wasn't expecting that, I admitted, my fingers unconsciously tightening around my coat. "I get it," he said, nodding. "And I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. That's never what this was about." I reached for his hand, resting mine gently on top. "You haven't made me uncomfortable, just surprised." He smiled faintly. "That's better than I expected." We lapsed into silence again, but it wasn't awkward. It was reflective, stretched thin between two people processing something bigger than the walls around them. His eyes were still on me, steady and unguarded. And in that gaze, I saw something I hadn't wanted to name before. A connection that had been quietly forming beneath years of conversations and shared moments. I looked down at our hands, still touching. "I don't know where this leads," I said honestly, my voice low. "I just know that what you said, I'll never forget it." "I'm not asking for anything," he replied gently. "Just that you understand." And I did. In the quiet aftermath, I started to recall the subtle moments that now felt heavy with meaning, his words, his tone, the look in his eyes, the small hesitations, the glances that lingered a beat too long, like a puzzle I hadn't realized I was trying to solve. Had this been building all along? And if it had, What did it mean that I hadn't seen it? Or that now I couldn't stop thinking about it? Zach had always been the affectionate type. But lately, that affection had taken on a new shape, subtle but unmistakably different. I thought back to those small, quiet moments, the way he'd gently tuck a stray lock of hair behind my ear, his fingers brushing my skin a beat longer than necessary. Or the words, those genuine, often unexpected compliments that I had once written off as a son's love. But now it felt different. Unfiltered. Honest. And it left me spinning. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable, but it was dense, charged with everything we hadn't said. Zach sat just inches from me, relaxed on the outside, but I could feel the tension in the way he held himself. He was waiting, bracing, his calm demeanor just a surface. Then suddenly, the elevator jolted. The overhead lights flickered to life, and a voice crackled over the speaker. The elevator was back online. We would be released shortly. "We're getting out," Zach murmured, not quite meeting my eyes. I nodded, heart thudding. As much as I'd wanted rescue, I couldn't ignore the bittersweetness of it. That confined space had held us in a kind of suspended reality, one that would vanish the second those doors opened. And then they did. A rush of cold hallway air hit us. Zach stepped forward first, then turned to me, hand extended. I stared at it for a moment, then placed my palm in his, letting him guide me into the corridor. The building was quiet, late enough that the halls were deserted, the fluorescent lights humming above us with a sterile stillness. The clock on the far wall told me there was no chance we'd make the party now, and strangely, I didn't care. "Let's just go home," Zach said quietly, like he'd read my mind. I gave a small nod.
Yeah.
"I think that's best." Without a word, he squeezed my hand and walked beside me. My mind was a storm. Memories of the elevator, his kiss, his confession. Each thought collided with the next, but beneath the confusion was a deeper thread, one that tugged at something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. The streets outside were nearly empty, the city muted by night. The breeze was cool, brushing my cheeks, slipping beneath my coat. Zach noticed. Without saying anything, he shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders before I could protest. "Thank you," I whispered, drawing it tight around me. He smiled, his fingers brushing against mine. When they laced together, it felt strangely natural, like our hands had been waiting for it. By the time we reached the apartment, exhaustion had settled in, body and soul. Zach unlocked the door, stepping back to let me enter first. His presence behind me was quiet, steady. The apartment welcomed us with familiar stillness. I slipped off my shoes and folded his jacket neatly over the arm of the chair, the subtle trace of a scent catching in the fabric. It grounded me, even as my mind still swam. "I'll make some tea," he offered from the kitchen. I nodded wordlessly, sinking into the couch, letting my breath out slowly. Everything that had happened replayed in fragments, the closeness, the honesty, the kiss. I still wasn't sure how to categorize what had shifted between us, only that it had. Irrevocably. When he returned, he placed a mug in front of me and sat down at my side, his presence warm against mine. The couch dipped under his weight, his nearness reminding me of the elevator all over again. "You okay?" he asked gently. "I don't know." I admitted, the words fragile. "It's just a lot." Zach reached for my hand. His grip was soft, intentional. "I understand. I don't want to push you. I just don't want to pretend either." I turned to him. His face held no trace of nerves or second-guessing, just quiet certainty. His eyes held mine, steady and calm. And behind them, something unshakable, devotion. "Zach," I began, my voice barely steady, "this is more than complicated. You're my son." "And yet," he said, softly finishing the thought, "something about this feels right." His thumbs swept gently across my knuckles. I couldn't look away. I couldn't deny the honesty in his words. As unsettling as it was to confront, a part of me felt it too. Being near him, this close, in this unfamiliar yet strangely comforting way, felt less like something new and more like something that had been waiting quietly between us, unspoken. "I'm not trying to push you into anything," Zach said, his tone even but full of feeling. "I just needed you to hear it. You mean more to me than I know how to explain. And no matter what, I'll always be right here." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. His voice, sincere and stripped of pretense, struck something deep. I tightened my hold on his hand, grounding myself in the weight of the moment. "You mean a lot to me too, Zach," I whispered. "You always have. But this isn't something we can just fall into." He nodded, calm, no disappointment in his expression. "I'm not expecting anything fast. I just want to be with you, whatever that ends up meaning. I'm okay with that." His quiet patience undid me. I leaned into him, resting my head gently against his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around me, and there was something indescribably steady in his touch. No hesitation, just warmth and care. We stayed like that for a long time, the apartment silent around us, cocooned in the kind of stillness that holds more meaning than words ever could. The tea sat untouched, growing cold on the table as the moments slipped by unnoticed. With my eyes closed, I let the emotions rise and settle, doubt and longing, comfort and apprehension. But with the steady thump of Zach's heartbeat beneath my ear, a fragile sense of clarity began to form. Whatever was coming next, however uncertain, however complicated, I knew we wouldn't face it apart. And somehow, that knowledge, unsettling as it was, warmed me in a way I hadn't felt in years.